The sky is calm, but far above Earth, in the depths of space, a storm is brewing. Not rain, not wind, not thunder, but something far more powerful and invisible. A solar superstorm. Imagine the sun, that golden star we take for granted every day, suddenly erupting with such force that it throws billions of tons of charged particles toward Earth. This isn't science fiction. It has happened before, and scientists warn it will happen again. The terrifying question is, what would happen to our modern world if such a storm struck tomorrow? At first, it would be silent. No warning sirens, no explosions, just a subtle flicker on your phone. Maybe your GPS failing while driving, or a strange static on the radio. Within minutes, satellites orbiting Earth would begin to falter. These satellites control everything: navigation, banking systems, weather forecasts, military communications, television, and even the internet backbone itself. Billions of people rely on them without realizing it. As the charged solar particles slam into the Earth's magnetic field, satellite circuits would fry. The skies above would go dark, not with clouds, but with a collapse of the invisible web holding our digital world together. Down on Earth, people would first notice their internet slowing, then dying completely. Emails won't send, banking apps won't load, online payments freeze. Suddenly, the vast digital marketplace that keeps global economies running would grind to a halt. Supermarkets rely on just-in-time delivery systems powered by digital logistics. With communication gone, trucks wouldn't know where to go. Within days, store shelves would empty. People who depend on credit cards or mobile banking wouldn't be able to pay for food even if it was available. Airplanes in the sky would face chaos. Pilots use GPS constantly, and without it, thousands of flights would have to ground instantly. Those already in the air would scramble to navigate using outdated methods. But with no communication towers working reliably, skies would become dangerously silent. Airports would flood with stranded passengers. Trains would stop on their tracks. Subways would grind to a halt mid-tunnel. A single solar storm could paralyze global transport in less than a day. And then comes the most devastating blow: the power grids. High-voltage transformers that carry electricity across nations are especially vulnerable to geomagnetic surges caused by solar storms. In 1989, a relatively minor solar storm knocked out the power grid in Quebec, leaving millions without electricity for 9 hours. That was just a small taste. A true solar superstorm would overload and melt transformers across entire continents. Repairing them would not be easy. They take months to manufacture, and only a limited number are available worldwide. Imagine weeks, months, or even years without power in entire regions. No heating in the cold, no air conditioning in sweltering heat, no clean water flowing from taps because water treatment plants need electricity. Modern civilization could collapse faster than anyone expects. Governments would be thrown into crisis. Emergency systems rely on radios, but if satellites and power are down, even backup generators would only last so long. Hospitals would run on emergency fuel for a few days, but what then? Critical machines for life support, surgeries, and storing medicine like insulin depend on constant electricity. Patients would die not because of the storm itself, but because the machines they rely on suddenly go silent. In every city, panic would rise. Supermarkets empty, ATMs useless, gas pumps frozen. Within a week, people might realize they are on their own. The fragile trust in systems would vanish, replaced by desperation. But this wouldn't just be a local disaster, it would be global. The internet connects every part of the modern economy. Stock markets rely on split-second trades through computers. If networks went down, financial systems would collapse. Banks would freeze. International shipping would halt. Ports full of containers would sit idle. Factories relying on parts from overseas would stop production. Millions would lose jobs instantly. Entire nations that depend on importing food would be left vulnerable. Within weeks, famine could threaten some areas of the world. And what about communication? With cell towers down and satellites destroyed, humanity would be thrown back into the 19th century. Letters might once again become the only reliable form of long-distance communication. Families separated across borders wouldn't know if their loved ones are safe. Soldiers abroad would be cut off from their homelands. Governments wouldn't know what other nations were doing. Fear of the unknown would spark conflict. In the silence, suspicions grow. Were rival countries behind the blackout? Was this an attack? Or is humanity simply too fragile, too dependent on technology to survive nature's wrath? In cities, nights would turn eerily dark. Without electric lights, skyscrapers would become hollow shadows. Streets, once buzzing with neon and traffic, would fall silent. Crime would likely surge in the darkness. Police radios would fail, making coordination almost impossible. Communities would be forced to form local defense groups just to survive. Trust in authority would break down, replaced by survival instincts. The divide between rich and poor would widen drastically. Those who stocked food, water, and generators would protect them fiercely. The rest would struggle. Yet the most haunting effect might not be physical, but psychological. Imagine billions of people suddenly stripped of their constant connection to the digital world. No internet, no social media, no streaming platforms, no online games, no global news updates. People who built their entire lives around the digital space would feel lost. The silence of a disconnected world would be deafening. Anxiety and depression would rise. Young generations who never lived without technology would face a crisis of identity. Humanity would be forced to look inward, to face itself without the constant distraction of screens. Of course, not everyone would collapse. Some communities, especially in rural areas, still live partly disconnected from the global network. Farmers who know how to grow food without relying on digital tools. Mechanics who can repair machines without computers. Villages with strong local bonds would survive better than crowded cities. Ironically, the least modernized communities might endure, while the highly developed ones crumble first. Survival would depend on skills long forgotten: hunting, farming, building, repairing with hands instead of machines. The question is not whether a solar superstorm will happen, but when. Scientists studying the sun know these storms occur roughly every 100–200 years. The last major one, known as the Carrington Event of 1859, lit up skies with auroras so bright people could read newspapers at night. Telegraph systems sparked and burned, and that was in a world without computers, satellites, or power grids. If such an event happened today, the damage would be incomprehensible. In 2012, a massive solar eruption narrowly missed Earth. If it had hit, we might already be living in that nightmare. So what can humanity do? Some scientists call for building stronger power grids with protection against geomagnetic surges. Others suggest launching more durable satellites. But truthfully, no system is fully prepared for a storm of this magnitude. Insurance companies estimate trillions of dollars in damages if it happens. Entire economies could be set back decades. And the worst part is that recovery wouldn't take days or weeks, but possibly decades. Without power grids and global internet, rebuilding modern civilization would be one of the hardest challenges humanity has ever faced. Yet, in this terrifying vision, there might be a strange form of hope. Imagine, after the initial chaos, people learning to live without the constant buzz of digital noise, families spending time together by candlelight, communities rediscovering old skills, humanity realizing that it survived for thousands of years before the internet and it can adapt again. Perhaps in the ashes of a broken digital world, something new and more resilient could emerge. But make no mistake, the price would be unimaginable. Billions would suffer and millions could die. The internet is not just entertainment. It is the backbone of global trade, medicine, transport, and survival. A solar superstorm striking tomorrow would remind us of one brutal truth. All of modern civilization is balanced on a fragile wire stretched between the Earth and the Sun, and one violent storm could snap it forever. So the next time you see a clear sky and sunlight streaming down, remember, our greatest source of life can also bring our greatest downfall. A solar superstorm is not a question of if, but when. And when it comes, humanity will face its greatest test, to endure not through screens and satellites, but through resilience, unity, and the raw strength of survival.